There was a discussion on this topic about 2 or 3 months ago over on Gen X. I was going to weigh in on the topic then, but then a couple of females came out with videos that said basically what I would have said, so I held off. But in the light of this Eddie Long scandal, I've decided to go ahead and revisit the topic and bring it over to YouTube. So anyway, there was a discussion comparing female pedophiles to male pedophiles and talking about how a lot of times female pedophiles get a lot lighter sentences. The person who originally brought this topic up, which was Divine Brown, set off a controversy when she said that if her teen son, and teen meaning less than 18 but still not a quote-unquote child, came home and said that he had sex with his teacher, she said that as far as she's concerned, her son just got him some. And that news would not stir the same reaction in her as it would if her teen daughter of the same age came home and said that she had sex with her male teacher. Now, what I didn't like about some people's response to her video is that they try to turn it into a racial thing. A lot of the guys who are over there are always trying to prove that black females always look out for other black females but don't care about the black males, including their own black male children. Now, there is some validity to that claim for some women because I've seen it myself, but this has nothing to do with that. Divine Brown didn't say anything new. She just stated how I think most people feel on some level, whether they say so or not. And just to clarify, I'm not saying that most people feel that if their 15-year-old son, for example, came home and said that his science teacher had sex with him, they would just say, well, you just got yourself some. No. What I'm saying is most people feel that it's not the same for a male to be victimized by a female as it is for a female to be victimized by a male. If that were the case, then female sex offenders would get the same sentences as male sex offenders, but that's not what happens. My own personal feelings is that it's not the same, but that said, if my 17-year-old son who was 17 and 11 months came home and said that his teacher had sex with him, I'm pressing charges. That is inappropriate, it's illegal, and it needs to be dealt with. And I would do that even if he consented to it, even if he enjoyed it, and even if he would do it again. And I do believe that if for no other reason than just to be fair, that female sex offenders should get the same sentence as male sex offenders. The law says that if you're over a certain age and you mess with somebody who's under a certain age, then you've broken the law and you're subject to punishment. And just like any other crime, it shouldn't matter whether you're male or female. If you break the law, you broke the law, and you should get the same punishment as anybody else who does that same crime. However, that still doesn't mean that I think that female sex offenders have the same effect on their male victims as male sex offenders have on their female victims. And to be clear, I'm talking more about statutory rape than filling on young kids. I'm talking about kids round about 13 and up, but less than 18. I think the heart of what makes the difference for me is whether or not it was the quote-unquote victim's choice or not. I do not think that every teen or underage person who has sex with an adult is scarred for life, regardless of whether they're male or female. Most of the time, like in the case of Deborah LaFave and Mary Kay Letourneau, the boys were willing participants. They sought out the encounters by making themselves available to the women, and then there were some cases where the boys were actually bragging to their friends, and that's what caused the teacher to get caught because he couldn't keep his mouth shut. You can't tell me, and I'll even bet money on it, that if the quote-unquote victim of Deborah LaFave could hit it again, he'd be all up in that. But flip that and make the female the victim and the male the sex offender, and it's a totally different ballgame. Yes, there are fast girls out there who I wouldn't consider to be victims any more than I would a male, but most of the time I think these male sex offenders go for the quiet girl who they know won't say anything and won't put up much resistance. They don't go for the willing girls, which would make the most sense, but I guess a lot of times what attracts these guys to these girls, besides the age, is the innocence. And a lot of times they prefer the girls who don't have a lot of experience because they can really have their way with them and quote-unquote teach them things. Well, anyway, I think in most cases the female victim doesn't participate by her choice. She's usually either forced or coerced into it. By nature, men are usually the ones who initiate sex, and then the female either accepts or rejects his advances. Also, females are the subordinate sex, and during sex, the female is the one who has her space filled. So it's a lot harder for a female to force herself on a male than vice versa. Yes, it can be done, but generally when sex happens between a male and a female, the male has to participate in some kind of way. And again, I'm not talking about little boys. But anyway, getting back to why most of the time I don't see the boys as victims. Any female who's ever been 13 to 16 years old knows how nasty 13 to 16-year-old boys can be. I remember when I was 14 years old, a freshman in high school, there was this teacher who had probably gone straight from high school to college and straight from college right into her career, so she was probably 22, 23, 24 years old. Long blonde hair, but to be perfectly honest, she wasn't all that cute in the face, but people go gaga over blonde hair for whatever reason. Anyway, I would be sitting in class, not her class by the way, I never took her class. I was in a woodshop class which was all male except for me. Anyway, I would be privy to a lot of boy talk, and I would just listen to these boys just talking about her. And I'm not just talking about, oh, she's pretty, I sure would like to kiss her. Nope, I'm talking about some graphic S-H-I-T, like bending her over and yada yada yada. I can't even repeat it here because I'll need a bath afterwards. You'd think you were listening to some grown men talking, but no, these were 13, 14, 15-year-old boys. Sometimes when I left that woodshop class, the only thing I had learned that day is what they wanted to do to that teacher or some other female. But then aside from that, they would do what would qualify as sexual harassment to us girls. It was nothing criminal, nothing too serious, it was all in good fun, but still the point is they were saying some nasty stuff to us. They'd be like, hey, you want to touch my dick? You're like, what? Nothing, I ain't say nothing. You nasty. Well, I thought you didn't hear me. And of course we heard them, and they knew that we heard them. The point was just to put feelers out there to see which females would bite the bait. It was usually the boys trying to get the girls to do something. Now, I don't know about this new generation, but back in my generation where kids were still relatively kids, most of the time the boys were the aggressors. Now, if these 13 to 16-year-old boys are trying to get gushy from us girls of the same age, I don't see how he automatically becomes a victim just because he got what he was looking for from a grown woman. And again, I'm talking about teenage boys who want to be sexually active. Now, even if you had a 13 to 16-year-old girl who wanted to be sexually active and she chose to be with an adult man, it still doesn't have the same effect as it does with a boy and a woman, because you would still be thinking, I wonder if there's something in her past or did something happen to her when she was little that would make her want to do this. It's just not in a female's nature to be an aggressor at that age. So if a teenage girl was being promiscuous, the first thing I would ask her is, what happened to you? If a teenage boy is promiscuous, that's just being a boy. Now, it could be that he's being promiscuous because of something that happened in his past, but that just wouldn't be my first impression. And perhaps the thing that happened to him in his past that's making him promiscuous is that he was born a male. And I'm not saying I would condone it, I'm just saying I wouldn't be wondering if, he had been touched or something. Alright, so we've talked about male on female and female on male. Now let's talk about the alternatives. The order for me goes in order from least importance to most importance is female on male, female on female, male on female, male on male. I think female on female is worse than female on male. The reason I say that female on female is worse than female on male is because, again, the victim is female, so the question comes up again, was it her choice? And then another reason why I rate female female over female male is because most people are straight, so you have to ask the question, well, is she gay by choice or is she being influenced by this older female? Now, there's no clear consensus on, what causes gayness. I do believe some people are born that way, but I do believe other people are made that way by influence of older people. I mean, if you're going to be gay on your own, fine, but I don't want for anybody to be pushed into it. Alright, and finally, the worst of them all, at least in my book, male on male. When we had a male victim of a female, we at least in our minds think that on some level he had to participate, maybe even want it. But when we're dealing with two males, the question comes up just like when we're dealing with a female victim, was it by his choice? Is he doing it because he's indeed gay and enjoys it, or is he doing it because the older male coerced him into it? And then another reason, for male victims of males, people feel okay ridiculing and blaming the victim. They'll call him gay and faggot and oh, you liked it. And I'm not saying that it never happens that a female victim of a male or another female doesn't get called a slut or whatever, or a cock tease or a lolita, etc., etc. But generally, female victims are protected. So as upset as I would be over my daughter being messed with by a male or even a female, put that times 10 if a male messes with my son. That would have me seriously thinking about going to get the shotty. So anyway, that's my take on that. Unless the aggressor is a male, I generally don't consider male victims to be victims. Now, if the boy comes home crying and he's really upset about it, then obviously he's a victim, but that usually doesn't happen with these boys. They usually can't keep their mouths shut and can't wait to do it again. So I'm sorry, it's just not on the same level as a female victim. But anyway, on to Eddie Long. It appears that he's gonna get away with murder. This dude didn't even skip a beat. No, I'm gonna take some time off for personal reflection, I'm gonna get some counseling. Nope, back up in the pulpit like nothing happened. You know what I hate? When people get away scot-free with stuff like this. Now, some of you might be saying, well, you had to pay some money and a lot of it. Well, he had it to pay, so really, what did he lose? I mean, for real. For how much money that church generates, that's just a minor setback. He'll have that back in maybe 5 to 10 years. I mean, the very fact that this guy could pay supposedly $12, $15 million to these boys lets you know how much money he has. If you can pay out $15 million and you're not naked and homeless, you got a lot of money. I don't know if he's paying that out personally or taking some of the money out of the church, but he's at least got access to a lot of money. So I ain't even tripping on the money, and I don't consider that to be a punishment. I just wonder why his church members who are still there aren't outraged. He killed 3 sins with 1 stone. He cheated on his wife, the people he cheated with were underage, and they were male. That's homosexuality, adultery, and statutory rape. I mean, the only thing left worse for him to do as a pastor would be to kill somebody. What more does this guy have to do to get some of these people to see the light? Talk about sheeple. I wonder if the reaction would have been any different if the victims had been females. Now, what he did for me was the worst, but for other people, females might be worse. And I still had some respect for Creflo Dollar, even though people call him a pulpit pimp and, he pushes prosperity gospel. Despite all that, I still had some respect for him. That respect is gone now. Not only did he defend Eddie Long when he was wrong, he scolded the church members for not wanting to sit up under him anymore. And he minimized what Eddie Long did. Oh, it was a wreck. He just had a wreck. Look here, people don't wreck cars intentionally. That's why another word for wreck is accident. You don't accidentally go up in boys' butts. I'm sorry. And I'm just wondering if Eddie Long gave Creflo Dollar any kind of financial compensation for backing him. Or is it just that since they're all in the same field that they just look out for each other? I mean, he didn't even condemn what Eddie Long did at all. He just went straight in on the members for leaving. How dare they? But anyway, I lost the respect that I have for Creflo Dollar, and now I gotta put him right back with the rest. That's the way it goes, I guess.